My name is John Doherty. I am the director head of Distill New York City. So like Josh said, I focus on technical SEO, I focus on content. My background is actually as a web developer. I was trained as a web developer and a technical writer at James Madison University in Virginia. I've been a blogger for like 10, 11 years, something like that. I hate that word. I hate calling myself a blogger. I've been writing on the internet for 10 years, let's say. And this is actually my first time in Minneapolis. I've never been here before, except for to the airport. I was just in Colorado for a few days, and it was freezing cold, and I was expecting it to be even colder here. When I got here, it's not as cold as I expected. It is as flat as I expected, but you know, I went to a pub just before I came here, and there's good beer, and so that lived up to its name. So yeah, I'm excited to be here tonight. Thanks to Josh for inviting me out. Super excited to be here. I'm gonna try not to run into this pole. If I get close, yell at me. If I run into it, it happens. So tonight, I'm gonna be talking about SEO success through technical SEO. So I'm going to be showing, I'm basically going to walk you through a process of how to achieve marketing success using technical SEO, how to diagnose problems, how to get buy-in, that sort of thing. I talked to Search Fest in Portland last Friday about getting buy-in from execs. So there's going to be some like ROI modeling and that sort of thing going on. So if I get too geeky on you, ask me questions at the end. I didn't know I was given 4 hours for this. I prepared for about 45 minutes. So, well, to talk for 45 minutes. I spent longer than 45 minutes preparing. I'm not quite that quick with PowerPoint yet. So let's go ahead and get started. So yeah, this is me. You may notice that I'm wearing the same shirt. That's actually on purpose. You guys know Rand Fishkin at SEO Moz? Yeah. He always wears like bright yellow shoes. So I spoke at a conference last fall, and I showed this picture, and a dude came up to me afterwards. He's like, "Dude, you're wearing the same shirt there." I was like, "Oh." That's actually a really good idea. If I keep wearing that shirt, then people are actually going to recognize me, that sort of thing. So always be marketing, right? Even your photos on stage, whatever. So yeah, that's me. There's my email address, my Twitter handle. I'm on Twitter all the time. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Answer emails, except for when I'm on vacation. I was just talking to some people about how to unplugging from email, unplugging from work. Sometimes actually really good. Things to do. I did it for the past few days and ready to rock and roll now. Also, by the way, I'm kind of fighting a sinus infection right now. Thanks Colorado and skiing for doing that to me. So if my voice crackles up after drinking some water, I apologize for that in advance. So I also call this talk Quit Building Links and Fix Your Freaking Site. Like I said, I'm a web developer by trade. I like technical SEO. I like on-site stuff. I like content. I like site architecture. I geek out about that stuff. I love Excel, conditional formatting is my friend, pivot tables, left, right, and center. And so I've worked with a lot of sites through Distill, a lot of big sites, a lot of smaller sites. I do some freelance stuff on the side, and people are always coming to me with, especially in the past couple of years, Google's gotten really tight on links and manipulative link building. So, Penguin hit about a year ago, and people's traffic is just like trending down. Now it seems like in the past, unless you did something really stupid, your traffic wasn't going to drop. And now I see a lot of sites that their traffic's going down, which obviously is bad for them, it's bad for their business, that sort of thing. Google's really just kind of clearing the crap out of the index. So if links were the only thing that were needed to rank, this wouldn't be the case, right? If links were the only factor, this is a search result from one of my clients. My client is actually right here. They're an e-commerce client. If links were the only thing needed to rank, they should be sitting at about number 2, right? And they were sitting at number 1, number 2 until Penguin came through. They did a lot of dodgy stuff before I started working with them. And we're in the process of cleaning all that up. But so links are obviously not the only thing that's needed to rank, right? If they were, this is what competitive analysis would look like, right? You go and you grab all of them, grab out their number of backlinks, and it would just be a straight curve on down, right? If you have whoever has the most links, boom, you win. Whoever has the most anchor text, boom, you win. So it's not quite as simple as that, but I mean, you get the idea, right? So I think that people will concentrate way too much on building links and not enough on their site, and not enough on how to actually get buy-in to fix their site. There's a lot of debt out there when it comes to technical SEO. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. But as I was thinking about this, I realized that it's actually really hard to be actionable if you're not actually looking at a specific website. And so I thought about going out and grabbing a specific website. I thought about doing Rasmussen, and was like, I'm not really going to do that. I don't really want to walk through like a technical site audit, but what I want to do is give you guys some ammunition for for your bosses, for your clients, what have you. So I want to talk about a process, because actionable is no good without a process, right? If you have a process, then you're actually able to make things happen. You're actually able to kind of walk through the process step by step to get things done. Which, so at Distill, we have a lot of memes, right? We have like, we call one is just getting shit done, right? We don't want to work with people that aren't going to be able to implement anything on their site. Another one is we call it giving a shit. We actually want to care about, our users want to care about our clients. But the getting shit done one is the thing, and so you got to have a process in order to do that. But as I said, the process doesn't just involve SEO, right? I mean, how many of you guys are professional SEOs at this point? Hands up. Okay, so about half the room. Just out of curiosity, just so I can know exactly who everyone is here. How many of you guys work at an agency right now? All right, big agency crowd. How many are in-house? How many work for themselves? How many don't know? One. All right, we got it right behind the back. All right, cool. So big agency presence here. All right, that's really good to know, because I work in an agency. I've also worked in-house. I worked for an online a marketing agency in Philadelphia a few years ago, working in the online education space. So that's kind of where I started, where I cut my teeth on SEO. Very at the time, very spammed out space, a very competitive space still. So it was for-profit colleges, which is a very, very interesting space. Not known for being the most ethical. So don't tweet this, but I actually did a lot of link buying and content spinning and that sort of thing back then. It was actually a really good way to learn SEO, not necessarily ethical white hat SEO, but it was actually a great way to learn it. But by working in-house, starting off there, and then now working for an agency and working with big clients, right? Bigger clients. I have one of the largest hotel chains in the world was one of my clients. It's sometimes really hard to push changes through. So it's not just enough to know SEO. It's not just enough to know how to find duplicate content, how to find thin content, how to diagnose whether you dropped because of Panda or Penguin, or you blocked your site in robots.txt, or a page isn't ranking because you're not linking to it enough, or going and doing competitor analysis, throwing into throwing into Excel, and making really pretty graphs. It's not just enough to do that. We also have to know how to talk to execs. You have to know how to get buy-in, how to model out the revenue that your clients, your site, your boss, whoever it is that you have to make things to in order to get things done. At the end of the day, that's where the magic happens. So this is kind of the four-step process that I've come up with, especially for you guys. But it's this talk basically just forced me to put into words exactly what I've been doing for the past couple of years. So it goes left to right, so it kind of goes that way. It's not a circle, which thinking back, it probably should have been. But so starting off with discover, and then pitching your case, and then the strategy. And the strategy is actually how you get it implemented, and then execution. So the execute part is going to be really quick. We're going to spend a lot of time on discover. Because this is actionable technical SEO, right? I'm hopefully going to teach you guys some new stuff, show you a lot of data, a lot of case studies, and then pitching it. How do you pitch it to your bosses, etc. And then the strategy, and that's not, do you do this first, or do you fix your duplicate content first, or do you fix your site architecture first? But that's actually who's going to do it. And then execution obviously is quickly, and that one's up to you. So the first part is discover. So if you start with the news, if you work agency side, which most of you do, you're probably getting new clients a lot, or they came to you and wanted something in particular, and you worked on that, and then they wanted some more work, and so then you had to go back to the drawing board a little bit, right, and say all right, so what are we going to do next? What are the next problems? Where's the next needle moving thing that we can work on, that we can implement, that you're going to see a return from? Because at the end of the day, our clients always want to see a return on their investment, right? That's what's most valuable to them. So the first step here, and I actually just realized that, well, I'm not going to stand for that. That trips me out a little bit. So I actually just realized I put step one. I don't think there's going to be a step two, but step one is, I was working on this last night. Sinus infection was just a little loopy. So we're just going to roll with it. So the first thing you have to do, obviously, is you have to discover your site flaws, right? You have to discover what's going wrong on your website. So the way I like to do this is to go out and I just grab as much data as possible. I go and I use all these different tools, which most of you guys are probably familiar with. I use as many tools as I can get my hands on. Working agency side, all of you work at agency side, you probably have access to most of these, if not all of these. Actually, a lot of these are either free or just like $99 a month or something like that. Some of you guys may use like search metrics or that sort of SEMrush, that sort of thing. But basically, I go and I use all these different tools to pull in as much data as possible into one Excel sheet, because then you can take it and you can manipulate it. If you don't know Excel that well, if you're a search marketer, you should. There is, I don't know, some of you may be familiar with Mike Pantoliano's Excel for SEO, distill.net/Excel for SEO hyphens, and they're just search Excel, or I think it ranks like number 4 for Excel guide, which is ridiculous. But I go and I grab as much data as possible from all these different places. My favorite hidden tool here actually is SEO Gadget. SEO Gadget, so they're based in the UK, and they've put together a bunch of different tools and plugins for Excel that you can use. If you have an SEO Moz membership, you have an API key, even just a free API key, you can plug that into there and grab like all the links from the site. You can grab like all the information about your site and your competitors' sites, like their domain authority and their links and all that stuff. And then also the keyword difficulty tool or the SERP analysis tool. You can go and do a full analysis on the top 10 results of any search result. So your main keywords, plug that into there, pull it down. And I actually built out a spreadsheet, the link there on the right. And this presentation, I don't think I'm going to put it up on SlideShare because there's a very similar one from last Friday on there that I hope you guys didn't look at. But I will send it to Josh and the guys and get them to send it around to everyone that's here. But basically what that tool does is you can do the SERP analysis, plug in the information, and it spins up all of the graphs. So it just visualizes everything for you. You can click through to the different sheets and kind of pick out where the anomalies are. So that's exactly what I do. I graph everything out and I pick out the anomalies and see, all right, what looks off here, right? Or why is someone ranking, like these guys right here. What the hell's going on right here with number 6, right? But this also tells me something, right? I'm actually going to show this here. This is one of the case studies I'm going to show you guys, but you can see here, like word count, I could tell from this one SERP actually correlated really well to search engine success. So, and then like up there at the top, that's another one of my clients on the far right, like they're way behind their competitors in links, their miles rank was way lower. In links, so like internal links and then links coming in from their site. So this is actually very valuable because this can show you where you are behind. It's just like a 10,000 foot view, then you can go and dig in even deeper. It helps you discover things like this, right? You guys are probably all familiar with this. So, duplicate content, 3 or 2 redirects, the architecture, canonical issues, which all these can get super geeky. We could spend 45 minutes on, canonical issues, right? We could spend so much time on those, how you diagnose those, all of that. I'm not going to try to do that tonight, but what I want to do is, like I said, just show you a bunch of data around this. So, duplicate content, first of all, is obviously one of the biggest issues that I've seen that keeps sites from ranking on the internet at this point. How many of you guys work with sites that have over 5,000 pages? All right, good number. How about over 10,000? 50,000? A few of you? How about over 100,000? All right, so we've got a few there in the back. So obviously, as you scale up the size of the websites, this becomes much bigger of a deal, right? And this is Zappos. Zappos is a great website. Adam Audette basically built Zappos' SEO program from scratch. I mean, they rank for stuff like shoes, and Nike shoes. I think they rank number 1. Like they do super well. But even here, using a site Zappos.com and then in URL like Nike shoes, they have 26,500 results that have Nike shoes in there, right? So this is a problem. Dr. Pete wrote a great post about this back on SEO Moz back last year at some point. Basically, what constitutes duplicate content, what makes a problem, and what puts sites at risk after Panda from a duplicate content perspective. So this was one of my clients, and so real quick, and you guys probably know this, but diagnosing duplicate content actually is super easy. There are tools out there that will do it for you. I think if any of you guys use Conductor for like your large clients, they'll show you duplicate content. SEO Moz Pro account will show you that in your campaigns. But this is actually super easy to do. I should actually do a whole talk on like advanced operators and just doing everything you need to do in SEO, do advanced operators, because actually just a little bit of work that way, a little bit of manual work, and you can actually diagnose a lot of these issues really fast. And this is actually one of the easiest ones to do. I think this is one of the highest ROI activities you can do on your site to basically tell Google better which keywords belong to which page. So it's just a simple site : domain.com, whatever your domain is, and then put in like a part of the URL, so Nike shoes, or Orlando hotels, or Minneapolis Metrodome, or whatever it is. And this will show you do a few of those, and this will show you if you have a problem or not. Especially like WordPress sites, categories, tags, that sort of thing. It won't show you like the www or non-www sorts of things, but I mean, just go up to the URL bar and you can diagnose that yourself. But this is an example. I had a client that actually had a big problem with this. They had at least six pages targeting every keyword term on their website. So it's a hotels client, so like London hotels, right? One of the most competitive terms out there. They had 8 different pages targeting London hotels, all of them within content, right? Or no content, literally a map and then a listing of the hotels. I was like, all right, guys, let's look at this for a minute. And I'll show you in a while how I pitch this to their execs to get the changes made. But basically, what happened is we changed the keyword targeting on their site. So basically, they have like their umbrella site, and then they have 7 different brands on their site. And so we basically changed it to, instead of London hotels is like their top category page, and then we changed it to like London boutique hotels, London luxury hotels. And we saw this, right? Huge jump. We saw like every single term basically jumped about 30 positions. I mean, they obviously were down in like the 50s, right? 50s, 60s, 70s, some even not even in the top 100. They all jumped up like 20, 30 positions when we did this. So it's a huge problem that this is super easy to diagnose. Depending on your CMS, can be super easy to implement and can be super high ROI for you, especially like e-commerce sites and that sort of thing. So another one, of course, is architecture issues. If a user can't get through your site, the search crawlers can't get through your site. And oftentimes, especially on larger websites, site architecture is just a mess, right? It's just pages all over the place. Important pages aren't being linked to. Pages aren't being prioritized by internal linking, or just like crazy random pages linking to other pages because people start thinking about it. Just like, I'm just going to throw a crap ton of links at this page and make it rank. And yeah, that used to work. 2003 called and once it's SEO back, but really like 2009. But still, that type of thing doesn't really work anymore. So site architecture is actually one of the harder things to talk about because it's actually kind of like esoteric, especially when you get into like big sites. There was actually a great post written by Joe Hall. I don't know if you guys know who he is. At Joe Hall on Twitter. Works for Jim Boykin at Internet Marketing Ninjas now. Used to do his own thing. But he actually wrote a great post recently about categorization of large websites. I recommend you go check that out. But basically, this is actually, I visualized this myself. I actually went and did a competitor analysis, and this is one of my clients' competitors. This is the way that they were linking. They were linking from like those are their, so it's like their home page, and then their category pages, and then their hotel pages, and then like other smaller pages off of that. So like directions and that sort of thing. So like directions pages from like an Atlanta hotel, we're also linking to Paris. It's like, well, that doesn't make a damn bit of sense, right? And then basically I showed my client that, and then I showed them like, this is actually what's going to work, right? If we clean it up, this is sustainable right here. So like just Chicago hotels linking back up to Chicago, and then maybe Minneapolis linking into it, like geographically similar sorts of things. But but that took me probably 5 hours to do, right? That's way too long to do. Well, that's not the order I wanted to do it in. So this is actually a much easier way to do it. How many of you guys use Vizio or have heard of Vizio before? All right, good. I love it when people actually use tools. So Vizio is a great tool. It's actually, I just have a free license and it works really well. What you can do is you can take a website, your website or your competitor's website, plug it in and have them crawl however many levels deep that you want. For this one, I set it just so, because I knew these sites were huge, I didn't want to, bog down my computer, make it crash, and then I wouldn't be able to finish my presentation. And yeah, that just would have been a disaster. You guys would have been pissed at me. But so this is one of our competitors, one of my clients' competitors. And you can see here, like, they have little, little clusters down here, especially right there in the middle. They have little clusters. They see they're linking to everything really tightly. And then this was my client. They had nothing going on, right? But the problem here is that this doesn't mean anything to a VP, a director, anything like that. So I actually said this throughout Search Fest as well, and I'm going to say it here too. If you show this to your boss, you show this to your execs, or your VP, or God forbid the C-suite, the CMO, or something like that, I want you guys to all be accountable to each other. You're not going to do this, and if anyone does this, shoot me an email, and I will fly back out here, and I will come kick that person right in the shins. I will do that, because this will not get anything done for you. I promise you. They'll be like, oh, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what's going on here? But this tells you a lot, right? As a professional, this tells you a lot. This shows you, oh, actually, they're kicking our ass in the search results, and this is part of why. And then you can go and you can dig in. You can dig in deeper. But so this is my hotel's client again. They had a lot of issues. They're great. I love them, but they had a lot of issues going on. So basically, they had no internal linking. Aside from the keyword targeting, they had no internal linking, and then their money pages were at least 5 levels deep, 5, 6, 7, 8 levels deep. And so what we did was we basically, I pitched, to say like this is the potential that we could see if we make this change, right? And so we saw that they were way low on the number of internal links, and the level was way too high as well. So we pitched to make that change, and we made the change. And we saw a bump here from, what's that, 70 to like the high 40s. And then we did it, and then we changed the levels, so we started linking to them better as well. And we saw another 10 to 15 position jump across the board for all of their terms, right? Pretty basic stuff, but it makes a huge difference. And there are so many large websites out there that actually are not doing this, right? And people aren't going in, they're not doing they're just building links to it and saying like, all right, let's just focus on this one page. Like SEO has become a whole site process. It's not just a one-page process, right? You obviously still have to have the keyword targeting on your individual pages, making the best landing page. John Henry Shirk from Sierra Interactive just wrote a blog post, maybe some water, a blog post yesterday about, he called it, what is your landing page's unique ranking proposition, right? What makes your website different from the other? What makes your page different from the other pages that it's targeting? But you can't just think about SEO on a page level anymore. It's a whole site process. So, keeping on. All right, so that's duplicate content. That's a little bit of keyword targeting. Indexation is something that I say it and I can kind of feel a shiver going through the audience, because indexation is one of those things that you're like, oh yeah, Google indexes my pages. Oh yeah, there's the visual cache and there's a text only cache, but I don't really know what happens other than that. But so sometimes Google, especially on very large sites, even on smaller websites, if you have if you don't have enough content, if you don't have good content, if you don't have any internal linking, Google's not going to crawl your site well. They're not going to crawl it efficiently, and therefore you're not going to be ranked nearly as well. This is actually really easy to diagnose, or to start diagnosing what's going on. So Webmaster Tools, as much as we knock it, can actually be pretty useful sometimes. So this is oh man, I forget where this is located in Webmaster Tools. I think it's under issues, I think. It's on the left, it's like number 2 down, and drill down a little bit. It's under health. It's under health. Health, there you go. Great, thank you. So basically this will show you, it'll show you the total number of pages that are indexed, it'll show you the total that were ever crawled, and it'll also show you some other issues like how many are blocked by robust.txt, how many have been removed. And it used to show you the number that were not selected. So basically, if this number is going up, like this is thanks to John SEO, based in Australia, a really smart guy. But like right here, something went on there, right? That was a problem. And then the ever crawl part as well. Something went on there, and so the site started having an issue at that point. But so basically, this can tell you if Google is crawling your site well or not, if you have something deeper that you need to dig into. In this case, not selected, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to do this also, or at least point you in the direction of some resources how to do this on your own with search crawlers. I did this on a big publisher site as well, where they saw a huge spike in not selected, and it was all due to pagination. And so if you're on an e-commerce site, if you're working for a big publisher, a lot of big publishers now like to do the paginated articles like Forbes. I mean, it drives me absolutely nuts, but advertisers love it. But this can cause a huge issue for your site. It causes a huge issue because the search crawlers are wasting a lot of crawl bandwidth. And then basically, as you know, they get bored. They go down 2, 3 levels and they get bored. They're like, this is the same old crap. And they leave. And they don't keep crawling your site like they should be. So I want to talk about pagination a little bit because this is actually something that we saw a big difference on a big tech website. So pagination was announced back in 2011. And when it first announced, I remember I was riding a train with Tom Critchlow, who used to be my boss at Distill. Went over to the dark side and now works for Google. I mean, he actually loves it over there. But I remember seeing it. We just got out to visit a client in New Jersey, and I remember seeing it. I was like, dude, like, what do you think about this? He was like, that's game changing. Like, that is absolutely game changing right there. That we can actually tell Google now which pages are the important pages on our website for them to prioritize their crawl with. And you can tell that on individual pages. So basically, Google is letting us tell them which pages are the most important, which ones are going to have the most fresh content, which ones do we want to rank for the bigger terms. So obviously there are a couple different ways to do it. I'm not going to dig into it too much, but there are two different types. So the first kind is like a series, like an article series, that sort of thing, where basically what you do is, see here, new studies prove that cookies are superior nutrition to vegetables. I totally agree with that. But so like there on the first page, basically up in the head section, you put that this is the next page, and page equals 2. On the second page, you have a previous and a next. Final page, you just have a previous. So you basically tell the search crawlers all the way through that like this is the whole series, this is where it starts, this is where it ends, this is a page in the middle, somewhere in the middle. So I linked to the blog post from back in September 2009 about that as well, because I think this is super important if you're working on a large site. And then another one is for view all pages. They say with news publishers, Google likes to prioritize, they like to show pages that contain the whole text as opposed to broken up. So they told publishers, implement a view all page where you can. Actually, I haven't gotten to implement this myself on a client yet. I would love to, but I'm going to show you here in a minute a case study from a friend of mine that works with a lot of big publishers. But first, I want to talk real quick. So I showed you through Webmaster Tools how you could diagnose this in the past. But how many of you guys have ever played around with server logs? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many people do we have here? Like 60? All right. So not a very high percentage, less than 10%. I can't do that math in my head right now. Server logs actually are not that scary to do. So this is from my coworker David Sotomano in the UK at D. Sotomano. He's one of the most brilliant technical SEO minds that I know. This was one of his clients that he got their server logs from them, which if you're at an agency working with clients, that can actually be really hard to do. If they're pushing back or something, like, it's going to take forever. We have way too much data. Just ask for like a 6-hour snippet of their server logs, right? If it's a site that's getting millions of page views a month, just 6 hours is going to give you a good idea of what the search crawlers are doing on their website. So he used a tool called Splunk, which is free. You basically take the whole server logs, plug it into Splunk, and then it'll count up like the number of times that Googlebot hit, and it'll count up the pages, and then you can visualize it. He wrote a post about it on SEO Moz, which is linked to right here as well. Basically with his client, he found out, so this isn't pagination, but he found out that it was crawling their PPC pages a ton, crawling their JSON a ton, and their main landing pages, like, what's that, a third as much as their PPC pages? So basically they blocked all their PPC pages, and robust that text, and they saw the main landing pages were being crawled a lot more, and they ranked better, and they got more traffic, and they made more money, and the bosses were happy, and all of that. So so I definitely recommend going to that post. Just take your personal site, take the server logs, play around with it before you go onto a big site. But I mean, this is obviously a very manual thing. But a quick word of caution: don't instantly, like, if your traffic drops and if your if your servers have the issue or whatever, don't automatically assume that is because a penalty hit, right? Don't go like running and saying like, oh my God, we got hit by a penalty, right? Did Penguin roll out? Did, go and tweeting, did another Panda algorithm roll out? Go and check what's happened on your site as well. I had a big publisher come to me that they were like, oh, we don't know what's going on. Our traffic is down like, 80%. And they were forwarding all of their URLs to another URL using JavaScript with no canonical back. So basically, this is what happened to their, like the time downloading a page, right? It's like in milliseconds, so it's like nothing, boom, and then they changed that back and it went back. So, do your due diligence before you start freaking out about a penalty or something like that. This is just a Webmaster Tools. This is really available. And this is the kind of thing that you should be constantly watching, right? I wish I had time to do this. I was hoping to build out like basically a dashboard for you guys that you could take, you could plug in your, plug in the API and then pull it all into one dashboard so you could monitor like indexation and these different houses. Because I hate going to these different websites and have to kind of like click through and hold down these different layers. But so yeah. Point being, don't automatically assume that there's a penalty going on when traffic drops. The first thing to always check is, get with your developers, get with, if it's yourself, think back like, all right, what did I change on the site recently that would correlate to this? And then freak out. This was, do you guys know who Marshall Simmons is? A few of you probably know, at MD Simmons on Twitter. He is the CEO president of Define Media Group. He's based in Idaho. His guys are all over. Basically, they work with like some of the biggest publishers in the world. So Marshall built About.com, basically. He built their whole SEO program, so he knows what he's doing. This is one of their clients, undisclosed client, so I can't say who it is, but basically what they did was, to get out of pagination, they took all of the 2, 3, 4, 5, and they paginated it, and then they actually canonicalized all back to the view all page, which is not a Google-approved way of doing it. So take this with a grain of salt, but they have seen page views are up double-digit percentages, and search traffic is up double-digit percentages for these as well. So, and this is one of the biggest publishers on the internet that some of you probably most of you read. So they did this for a number of different reasons. This obviously paid off heavily for them. So I actually want to start a movement to bring back the ignored URLs, right? Can we do that? Because I was pissed when I found out that this was removed, because this has been super helpful for me. So if you guys agree, tweet something like this. Google, can we please have ignored URLs back in Webmaster Tools, right? Tag with image search. I would love to get this back. I actually just saw a couple days ago that, I think it was John Mueller said that they actually removed it on purpose because people weren't finding it helpful. And then I saw like, Matt Brown and like all these guys who now works for SEO Moz, and all these guys were like the guys that work on the big publishers were like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this is the most useful thing in Webmaster Tools, and now you're taking it away from us. So I think we should try to get that put back in there, because if you're working on a large site, this is going to be super helpful for you. So I want to reiterate as well that like if you get the basics wrong, your site's going to suffer. I had a client that had 10,000 302 redirects on their site when I started working with them, and they had 250 pages on their site. Let me let that sink in for a minute. Yeah, right? Hilarious, unless you're the one working with it. So basically, I took Screaming Frog. How many of you guys use Screaming Frog? More hands than that need to go up. Screaming Frog is like the best tool out there for an SEO. You can do 95% of the stuff that you need to do in SEO using Screaming Frog. I promise you, it is worth the $99 a year licensing fee. $99 is nothing. So I discovered this through, I didn't do that yet. Actually, let's keep talking. So this is what happened, right? We had, there were a ton of redirects, temporary redirects. It spiked right there. That was right before we started working with them. And then we started iteratively fixing 302s, and we saw traffic triple, right? So it was like, we fixed the biggest chunk up there at the top, and these are also ones that actually had links to them. So we prioritized it, right? The ones that actually had links, had link juice going to them, that would help us out. We prioritized it, and traffic tripled in 5 weeks. And then it's kept going up. In my deck on Friday, I had a graph that traffic has actually gone up 800% since then in a year's time. So they said, they basically fixed their technical base, discovered this through Screaming Frog, super easy, and now traffic is up 800% year over year. which is insane. This, like I said, this is super easy to do. If you use SEO Mods Pro, they actually tell you this is where this is kind of where I monitored it, and they've had a little spike there. Again, recently we've been doing some testing, and they actually had some legacy stuff left over in their CMS and in the way that they roll stuff out. So that's something that obviously is starting to go down again. Something I'm working on with their in-house team. But this is super easy to diagnose, and pretty easy to fix as well if you're any good with your development team. I mean, anyone that's worked on enterprise level will tell you, bring in a 6-pack of beer and make friends with your development team, and you can get these things fixed pretty quick. All right, so moving on from the technical geeky side for a minute. How am I doing on time? Out of curiosity, how long am I up here for? 14. How long? 14?
40.
Yep. I've been talking for 40 already?
4 minutes. Don't worry, take your time.
Jeez.
You got 3 hours left.
All right, 3 hours left. We're good. All right, so I don't just want to talk about like the technical parts of SEO. I want to talk about content as well, because so until a couple of years ago, for any of you that have been in the industry for longer than 3 years, you know that you used to just be able to throw a ton of crap links at a page and it would rank. And as I said earlier, that's no longer the case, right? In the last, so Tom Critchlow wrote that post on the Distill blog almost a year ago called "The Time for Content Marketing Is Now." And since then, content marketing has kind of become like a buzzword, but I actually like content marketing, and I like the term. I don't like how it's been used, but I like the term because it shows that actually if you're going to build a brand, you need to prioritize content on your site, right? And yes, it needs to be high quality content, so working with a good designer, working with a good data scientist to get the right data. It needs to be on brand, so you're telling the story that your brand always tells you. But this content is no good if no one's going to find it, right? And it's not just through social that content is discovered. Like yes, that can be a big part, and that's an important thing to watch and and to push and strategize about. But you can actually use technical SEO to get your content discovered even more. And once again, this is something that is pretty easy to do, and it's actually in publicly available tools. But this is actually something that I'm pretty passionate about. I showed this slide on Friday at Search Fest as well. This is from Brain Traffic. They're actually based here, right? Christina Halverson. I've never met her in person, but I would love to someday. But this is basically, I'm talking about content, like content marketing here, content strategy. You can also use this to describe SEO overall, right? So you got you have the substance, which is content. What's actually on the page, what's your unique ranking proposition, the workflow, so how's it getting implemented, the governance, how are you keeping it up. I was talking to Adam about governance and just maintaining the website. Of course, there's the structure part, so the information architecture part, which we were talking about earlier. But so the structure part is actually where this comes into play. So say you produce a great high quality piece of content. You've got your content strategy set out. You're going to be producing a bunch of high quality guides. Say you're in the travel space, you're producing guides about every major city. 24 hours in London, 24 hours in Washington, 24 hours in Paris, that sort of thing. But these terms also have search volume, so you don't just want. And travel stuff can be pretty inherently social, so that that's going to be better. People are going to email it. People are going to tweet about it. Hey, I found this this guide really helpful. But other people need to discover, because people are searching for travel guide to London, that sort of thing all the time. And probably for a lot of the industries that you guys work in, people are searching for it as well. So obviously you guys know how link juice works. You know how link equity works. The stronger the pages are that are linking to the page on your own site, so your internal links matter a ton in this case. Obviously you're going to want to get external links to those pages as well. But the stronger pages that you can get linking to those from your site into the new pages on your site, the better chance that page is going to have a ranking. Super easy to find. Webmaster Tools, once again, your top linked to pages, your strongest page. Obviously your home page is going to be up there. So this is Distill. I did this on distill.net, so you can see we have building your own scraper for link analysis, the main blog page. So if I'm going to launch say I was going to write a guide for Distill and was going to launch it, I would want to link to it from all these pages, right? I'd be like, well, talking to Will Chris, I'd be like, dude, I want it in that that splash thing across the top. I want it there. I want it on the sidebar of the blog. I want it all over so that it could rank Excel for SEO ranks number 1 for Excel for SEO, Excel guide, we wrote a video marketing guide that ranks well because we link to it from all these different pages. Of course, Open Site Explorer. Who here doesn't? Well, who here knows about Open Site Explorer? All right, a lot of hands. I don't want to ask who doesn't, because then people feel awkward. I always hated this, like, oh, I don't, but whatever. So, Open Site Explorer, if you want a new page to rank, basically figure out a way that you can link to that new page, that new piece of content from your strongest pages. It could be in the sidebar. Don't go crazy on footers. People used to go crazy on footers, but footers actually still work. I've done it with some larger sites. You do it not like huge site wide, like millions of pages, but if you can categorize the pages on your site and do footers that way, it can actually work really well, especially for international languages. So if you work on an international site, that can work really, really, really well. I've seen great results with that. For content, that's not necessarily going to work so well. So I wanted to talk about. I know the panda's cute and cuddly, right? Just waiting to bite your head off that. So I want to talk about penalties a little bit. So Panda isn't actually a penalty; it's an algorithm. So it's not like something that you submit a re-inclusion request for. It's something that it's a signal to you that you need to fix your site, right? You have something going wrong with your site. It could be duplicate content. It could be you have no content on your pages. This was my hotels client again. God bless them, I love them. But I showed this earlier. Content correlated very well. So I took Screaming Frog and I plugged in the top 10 pages in their ranking for their key terms. So I plugged in their competitors. I just threw it into a notepad file, saved as a .txt, imported it into Screaming Frog. So Screaming Frog works in two ways. You can either plug in a domain and it just crawls spiders the whole thing, or you can import a list of URLs and it'll crawl everything and tell you all the information about the inlinks, the outlinks, the H1s, the H2s, the title tags. You get the idea. It'll also give you the page size. So the page size, of course, isn't just the on-page content, but it's the code and that sort of thing. So actually, what I saw in this search result was the richer the page, the better it ranked. So what I did was I was like, all right, let's test this. Let's see what's going to happen. What's going to happen here. Let's put a bit of budget towards it. I think we put like $3,000 towards it to write content for some of their most important pages, and we tested it. And so what we saw was they also had a lot of their individual pages ranking for head charts, category pages you're ranking for. So we wrote content for the category pages. And so once we did that and we launched it, we measured it. When the hotel pages stopped ranking and the category pages started ranking, so let's say hotel page was ranking at 50, we saw on average that the category page would rank over 13 positions higher than the hotel page was ranking. So it was ranking at 50, the category page would start ranking at mid-30s, that sort of thing. And then for pages where the category page was already ranking, 5.5, 6 positions. So every little bit helps, right? So it was worth it. Bumped a bunch of turns on the first page, saw a nice traffic bump, saw a nice revenue bump, got more buy-in to do it. So I want to talk a little bit about knowing what kind of content is working, because people always say, especially bosses, they always say, all right, why should we invest in this, right? What kind of, why should we put budget towards this? Why can't we just throw some links, at the page? Once you explain to them, and this isn't just an SEO play. I want to reiterate that content is not just an SEO play. Content is a brand play. Content helps SEO. Content helps SEO a lot, but content is a play for your brand. It's a play to become a thought leader in your space. So, and once again, I'm going to talk about this here a bit more in a minute, but pitching a test, right? Saying let's trust me for a minute and let me, create 2 or 3 high quality guides, infographics, visualizations, whatever you want to do, whatever you have the capabilities of doing, and then measure it, and then pitch to get more budget to do more, right? To show what's going on. But to start off with that, you need to know what you're basing your success off of. So this starts with talking with your boss and saying, all right, what would be successful to you for this content? Is it going to be, and it's going to be different for everyone. It could be social shares. It could be links. I would recommend not doing links, to be totally honest. But social shares. It could be leads. Whatever it is. Usually for content, especially in very like social circles, it's social shares. Is the best thing to measure. But so basically, you set your result. You basically say like, all right, this is what we want to do, and you can look at other pieces of content in your space and basically like benchmark against them and say like, all right, if we get this, then it's worth our time, to do it. So measuring. Once you've been producing content for a while, then you can kind of go and you can categorize the content that you've done. So this is from my own blog. I wanted to know what content was working best for my own blog, to produce. A lot of you guys, I bet most of you guys have blogs, like corporate blogs, that sort of thing. And after a couple months of cranking away and cranking out content, it's like I actually kind of want to know, like, how can I? At least I think, as an SEO, as a marketer, as someone that just likes to make things better, what's working best and how can I do that better, right? So it's a whole startup mentality. Do more, do it faster, do it better. You're constantly iterating upon it. So I wanted to know what was working best. So what I did was I went and I grabbed my top pages from Open Site Explorer and I threw them into Shared Count. You guys familiar with Shared Count? SharedCount.com is a great tool that you can plug in. They released a multi-URL dashboard about a year ago, but before that you could just plug in one URL and it would pull all the social metrics for you. But you can also put in multiple URLs now, download a CSV, put it into Excel. So what I did was I did that for my top, I think this is like 10, 12, 13 pages. And then I downloaded the CSV and I categorized it. So these are different categories that I read about. And you can see here, links obviously is number one, right? SEO's the love of link building. I actually joked on Friday at SearchFest that I was glad there wasn't a link building presentation going on at that time because no one would have been in my talk. And I totally believe that's true. People love link building. But I can tell here that, my posts about general marketing actually do the best. They actually do better than like a lot of SEO posts or social posts. So I was like, okay, cool. So this is the kind of content that I need to be writing, right? And this is what you show. This is the kind of thing that you can base your pitch off of to your boss. Go and show him like, this is how many social shares we're getting, this is how many leads we're getting from it. So you have to draw it out, to the end game. And then also learn from the successes of others. Before you even start to produce content, before you start to put content onto your site, before you even start to do internal link, I hope that you can take a lot of these examples that I'm showing you and use those and apply them to your bosses and show them to your boss and use that to get buy-in, at least to start doing stuff on your own website. This is a post that I did on SEO Mods last September. It was an updated, so Casey Henry at SEO Mods wrote a post back in 2009 about what kind of content gets links. I mean, it's based in the SEO space. If someone here wants to go and like do it for other verticals as well, that would be awesome. I would love to see that. I will share the hell out of that, I promise you. But basically what I did is I went and just did a bunch of analysis on what kind of content on SEO Mods gets shared the most. So, and also like the kinds of content on there. So, what kind of content gets shared the most? Also, what kind of content gets the most links? So I did a bunch of analysis there. Found that posts with lists, images, and videos get shared a ton. They're Whiteboard Friday videos that used to be random all the time. Now there's a lot of other people doing them as well. Those actually did really well because he's built that up over 6, 7, 8 years, like a long time. So he's built a brand there, right? Branded content does super well. Videos without that are not the Whiteboard Friday don't do quite as well, but they still get a good number of linking root domains. So basically, and this one here is linked. So this is like this graph isn't as great as it should be, but this is the longest the longest blog posts that are there, and that's the shortest blog posts that are there. So the longest posts actually get the most links. So long form content works, right? Use this kind of thing. Use case studies that other people put out as well to get buy-in from your boss. So talking about buy-in, I want to spend a bit of time talking about pitching. About pitching, not like baseball pitching. You guys have the Twins? Yes. I used to be a big baseball fan. Not as much anymore. I was like, man, I'm about to either like be praised or like heckle off the stage if I get this one wrong. So I'm not talking about obviously pitching like baseball, pitching to your bosses. I don't think I just made a baseball joke. So what I did, this is the hotels client again. What I did was I took all their issues. So I went and I did all that data and I gathered all their issues, right? And basically from my from my point of view, as the SEO, as the expert in this space, someone that they brought on to help them out, I took all the different issues and I prioritized them. What I thought would make the biggest difference, and also getting to know them, what they could actually implement. So I knew that the keyword targeting was actually going to be pretty easy to implement. It involved like taking the keywords, assigning them to a page, and uploading it to the database, and then pushing it live. Not that hard to do, right? And we even tested it on a subset of pages, and then got the buy-in to do it further. The minimal content on the SEO pages. Don't get me started on SEO pages. This doesn't work anymore. Where you have like your search experience and then your SEO pages. Like one integrated site is what works. Is what's working now in Google. No internal linking. This would be a huge effort. That's something I'm still working with them on. We've done like 2 of the 4 steps I wanted them to do, but all their key terms have gone from like the 90s and below 100 to like in the mid 30s to mid 20s at this point. But it's super high effort. It's taken us like 6 months to get that and it started to be implemented. No crawl path. So basically what I'm showing here is, go from highest to lowest, right? We talk about low-hanging fruit. People want low-hanging fruit. Give them the low-hanging fruit, right? Even if it's going to take a bit of time, rank them against each other and show like, all right, this is going to be the easiest one for us to do. Let's knock this out while we work towards the towards the medium, and then towards the high, right? This is where the strategy part comes in. Because the high effort, that's going to take a long time. So you might need 6 months to lead up to that. And while you're doing that, you can be knocking out the low effort stuff. And bosses love to hear that. They love to hear strategy, I promise you. So you have to get internal buy-in for these changes. Of course, first you have to know who are you pitching to. You can show a bunch of stuff. Any of these can work, right? You can show, if it's your director of search, that then needs to pitch to the CMO, right? And if you have a director of search that can then pitch to the CMO, like you're in good stead because they can make your life a lot easier. So like you could show them that diagram, right? Or you could show them you could show them this graph here. But so what you show depends on who you're pitching to. So I want to reiterate, you need to pitch the why and the what, not the how necessarily. You need to pitch the what you want to change, you need to pitch the why we should change it. I linked to it down here. Unfortunately, we don't have an internet connection on there because I was going to show you like a quick video. It's a TED Talk, actually. How many of you guys have listened to the Simon Sinek TED Talk about the power of why? Oh, man. All right, I have homework for you guys. Go home tonight and watch this TED Talk. Just search TED Talk, Simon Sinek, Power of Why. This is the single most influential thing that I've ever watched on the internet. Single most influential thing I've ever watched on the internet. And he's not even talking about marketing. He's talking about why we do things, right? So people don't care about. You can even just say pitch the why, not the what and the how. And the what I left up there is the what revenue can we expect, what leads can we expect, that sort of thing, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. We're going to talk about modeling and that sort of thing, but the why is the first thing. The why is that's what's going to, this could be a thing for them to hang their hat on and say like, all right, this is what's going to make me money, this is what's going to give me leads, this is what's, going to do whatever. I'm going to buy a bigger boat or, whatever people care about. Bigger apartment in my case, I live in New York City and rent is just freaking ridiculous. But so, you want to give them something to care about. So let's get math geeky for a little bit, for just a minute, and talk about ROI modeling. How many of you guys have ever done some ROI modeling for your bosses? All right, a few of you. Great. That's good. That's good to see. So this is the one that I use. So obviously, we all know how to do keyword research. We all know that the AdWords tool sucks, but it's the best thing that we have. So we all still use it. So taking the potential traffic and not plus. Dang it, typo, very important part. That will be fixed before I send this out. Because that is not a plus. That is supposed to be a multiplied by. Potential traffic multiplied by the conversion rate, so the conversion rate from your whole site. Or if you have a large site and categorize your pages, the conversion rate from that type of page. Page types are very important on large sites. Times the amount of money that you can expect to make from per conversion. And then you divide that by basically the amount of effort that it's going to take, right? The number of hours it's going to take times the developer's hourly rate. And if this is greater than 1, all right, it's worth making a change for. The bigger that gap is, 2s, 3s, hundreds, the larger that is, the more important it's going to be to fix, because that's where you're going to see the biggest return on investment. Will Critchlow wrote a great post about meaningful SEO metrics recently on SEO Must. I recommend checking out. So this is it. No typo there. Awesome. But this is it. Modeled out for you, written out. Not quite as scary for you. So this is a potential revenue model, or potential leads model, or whatever your KPI, potential social shares model. I mean, social shares don't pay the bills, but so I definitely recommend doing revenue or leads or whatever it is that actually that's how you monetize your site. So I've talked about this a little bit, but when you're pitching to execs, when you're pitching to important people that control revenue, they control the budget, you're gonna have a hard time saying like, hey, I need $100,000 for content. They're gonna be like, get out of my office right now. But if you say, hey, can I have $2,000 to produce some content to see what it does to our rankings and therefore our traffic and therefore our revenue, they're probably gonna say, okay, go for it. Why not? And if they won't say 2,000, do 1,000. Whatever you can, get as much money as you can in order to show something meaningful to them. But pitch tests, not across the board changes. So I pitched a test to my hotels client. We've already talked about this. I postulated that if we added content, rankings would increase, and we would also be able to prioritize the important pages. And it did, right? It worked. It worked great. We saw that rankings increase that we were talking about. So I pitched another test. Right? We got buy-in, started creating more content for more pages, but I was like, oh, okay, so that test works. Let's pitch another test, right? Starting to build a little bit of momentum with the execs there. So like, all right, let's start implementing these internal linking changes. So this is where we did those language and section-specific footers that I was just talking about, and we saw that's about 25 to 30 position increase right there. So we saw a nice bump. And then, all right, let's do some more internal linking. So another 10 positions across the board, going up. So basically, we keep pitching. You keep pitching tests. You say, all right, this worked, so let's keep doing more of that. But then let's do the next step in our strategy as well. So yeah, I already talked about you can pitch on-site changes. So it doesn't even need to be the same one. So internal linking right there, and then keyword targeting. Right, this page went from 70 to number 6. For a 10,000 local exact searches a month term. We kept pitching, right? I just kept pitching to their exact, and honestly, their VP scares the hell out of me. And I kept pitching to them because I was like, this is working, right? This is giving us great return. And we kept doing it. So keep pitching. Don't be afraid to keep pitching to your execs as you go. All right, so. We've talked about SEO, we've talked about diagnosing issues, we've talked about pitching ROI and pitching, and modeling it out, and now how are you going to get it implemented? The implementation is the hard part now, right? As you know that. The analysis is easy, getting buy-in is not quite as easy, but fairly easy, and now strategy, how do you actually get it done, right? How do you get people, to get the work done? So these are the kinds of questions that I think about when we're trying to get something implemented. We've done all the work. It's who's going to execute upon it? How do they know what to do? Who's going to tell them? Who's going to be? What accountability is in place? Right? Who's going to be accountable for telling them about it? Who's going to hold them accountable for it? Who's going to hold them accountable to doing it? And then what's the ultimate goal? So that's those KPIs that I was talking about. The key performance indicators. If you don't know what KPI is, key performance indicators, basically what you're measured off of. So what's the ultimate goal? So the first thing is the who and the how. How do you keep track of it? Who's going to do it? There are a bunch of different, I'm sure you guys all have different project management tools that you use. Maybe it's a Google Doc that's been used for a long time. We use Trello at Distill. I think, Josh and Rasmussen use it with Chris, and I think they love it. It's actually really simple, really easy to use, but the goal is basically to centralize your tasks so that everyone is on the same page. And the thing I like about Trello is that it's super simple. You can kind of move cards around. You can also assign it to people. So you can add your developers in, and they can't really refuse it, and then you can assign them stuff, and then it bugs them with emails saying hey, you have this deadline coming up, which is great. So centralizing your tasks. This is our public Distilled You roadmap, and then you can use checklists within that as well. So this is part of the accountability thing. This is holding people accountable to what they say they're going to do, and this is also part of your strategy as well. It's can you get as granular as talk to this person about this, and then push this change on this, and and whatever you need it to be. So assign those due dates as well. One tip that I've picked up recently that I've just started doing with my clients, especially with development teams, is something called story time. How many of you guys use the Scrum, use an agile methodology? 1, 2. All right, wow. All right, so more than I thought. So this is actually taken from like the legit agile method. There's a lot of talk about being agile, which basically means, which a lot of people, for them it means being flexible. But agile is actually like a very structured thing. We have like scrum masters and teams. You have like daily or weekly stand-ups, and basically it's like everyone's on the same page. So I actually got this from my girlfriend, she's a project manager for an education technology startup. They use the agile methodology. And the other day she was like, oh, I have story time in the morning. I was like, you get to have story time in your job? That's cool. What kind of stories you guys telling? And she was like, oh, it's how we keep track of. It's like how we decide on what we're going to do and how much we can get pushed out before the next release. I was like, oh, not quite as cool as the story time I was thinking about, but still pretty cool. So basically, what you do here is, this is everyone getting on the same page, right? And this is how you model out that effort that I was talking about in that model that I showed you. The hours times the hourly rate. You know the hourly rate. You find out the hourly rate. Basically, what you do is you get your whole team in together. Once you've built the strategy, your development team, you have your content team, etc. Especially for technical changes, get your developers in the room and tell them, like, all right, this is what we need to do. We got buy-in to do this. This is why we're going to do it. How many hours is this going to take? Developer number 1, 5 hours. Okay. Developer number 2, 10 hours. Okay. Developer number 3, 2 hours. All right. So everyone has different ideas about what it's going to take, and then basically you don't leave the room until it's decided, until they all agree on the number of hours that they think it's going to take. Go a little bit conservative on it, because obviously, like, especially with development bugs, issues will come up. But basically, nail down that number. So then that is, that's how you get as accurate of data as possible to pitch to your executives. And that's how you set client expectations, internal expectations, and that sort of thing. That's where you get communication from. We have an internal saying that communication solves all problems. Right? So, communicating with your team, communicating with your bosses, with your clients, etc. Over-communicate, because then no one's ever going to come to you and ask, like, hey, what are we working on now? So, you can keep communicating this stuff back to your executives. So, things like number of hours, number of people it's going to take, the date due. I linked to the Wikipedia page. This is the best thing I could find about the agile methodology and Scrum development. And then, of course, once you've gotten the changes pushed through, you need to report on it. Different people have different ways of reporting. If I can be totally honest with you, and I'm going to be, because I'm on the microphone, and don't tweet this, but I hate reporting. I really do. Like, reporting is the bane of my existence. I hate it. I see it, yes, right back there. I hate it. I absolutely hate reporting, but it's one of the most important things that you can do. This is how you get the buy-in, right? It's all about coming up with a repeatable process that works for you. So there are a couple different kinds of reporting that you can do that will get you the buy-in that you need. You can report on the amount of work done, that's internal. Then you can report on the ROI, so that's external. It's to your boss, it's to your client, etc. So reporting on the amount of work done is going to be something like crossing off, the points on the checklist, and reporting to your Scrum Master or your project manager or whoever it is. The ROI on the work, this is all dummy data, but reporting on the ROI to your clients is how much money we made you, or to your boss is how much money the website made this month, and year over year this is what the change is. So those are a couple different ways that you can report, and there are a ton of other ways that you can report. There we go. So sometimes you can report from the 10,000 foot level as well. You can actually show this kind of graph. This is taken from Conductor, which I've plugged a couple times, and I absolutely love it for the enterprise level stuff. But I've actually just shown these graphs before to a VP, because it's up and to the right. They love seeing stuff going up and to the right. They don't understand data at all. Up and to the right, that's exec speak right there. Like this right here. They've increased the number of ranking keywords by like 25%. The number of unique ranking URLs has gone from 3,000 to almost 4,000 in a couple of months, right? 25% increase. Like, the execs love seeing that sort of thing. Once again, it's something they can hang their hat on. So This is another, modeling to compare your competitors against yourself. Potential traffic times conversion rate times the conversion amount. You can kind of guess at this, but in the travel space, that if you make $200 per conversion, another hotel chain is going to make the same thing, but an OTA, an online travel agency like Expedia is only going to make like $50, right? So you can say like, all right, they need this amount of traffic to make this much money. We only need this amount of traffic to make just as much money. And then if we increase our rankings, our traffic X amount, we can make this much more money than them. Kick your competitors to the curb. And execs love hearing that kind of thing. So yeah, they love, execs love revenue. At the end of the day, that is what you should be pitching on. You should be pitching on money. If you're the marketer, you should know, even if you're working agency side, you should know the business through and through enough that you should know what the cost per acquisition is. You should know how much you make per lead, per sale. What your average sale amount is. You should know what your conversion rate is. You should be the go-to person on this for your website, for your client, even if you're a consultant, right? It's going to be hard to get that information from them sometimes. But if you don't have all that information, it's going to be hard to make really good data-driven decisions for them. And yeah, at the end of the day, revenue is the most important thing. So you should know how much a lead is worth. And that's how you're gonna pitch to your execs. So once again, I've shown you this a couple times, and that one doesn't have a typo. This is the model that I use for estimating ROI. So cost to fix, hours times hourly rate. Pretty simple math for you. And then finally, the execution, right? And this is just the process. You diagnose the issues. You prioritize them, like I showed, from highest or from least amount of effort to the most amount of effort. You pitch it, you strategize on it, you get the process down, and then you execute upon it. So that's all I have for you this evening. I'm here this whole evening. I'll be drinking some beer later. And I'll take any questions you guys have now. So thank you very much for listening. Go for it.
So John, we've got a massive e-commerce site with lots of pages with pagination issues.
Yeah.
And so we're currently in the process of redeveloping the pages, but it's built on a really gnarly system, Fred Hopper. I'm sure. Okay. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been going back and forth with our IT guys is, do we use the, we presented that method of previous, next, and then so on and so forth. But one of the things that I recommended, I made it wrong in recommending this, but my recommendation was to simplify it. Just put a canonical tag, because what happens is there's only one page, one template, but it inherits the properties from the database as the pages load. Okay. So my recommendation was on that primary page template, just put a canonical tag to represent page 1. So that any subsequent page references that page 1 in the canonical. Yeah. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, if you think that's bad or...
So, can you guys hear me if I don't use the microphone?
Yeah.
All right. This is going on.
All right. So, are you talking about? So this isn't like a colors thing. So like you have a shirt and you have like blue and red and that sort of thing. Can you go a little bit like?
Yeah. So if you search for if you're on the site and you click on pants, right?
Right.
Pants.
Right.
Industry.
Yeah.
Let's say we have 100 different types of pants.
Sure.
Right, and 100 different products of pants.
Right.
So you scroll through 10 pages to see all of them, right? Because it's built on a really crappy old system that we're not changing.
Yeah.
So similar to the content you were saying, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, I'm reading it.
Right.
So and they're all, it's one subcategory page with multiple pages of products.
Sure. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
Yeah. So to kind of
So it's not a product page, it's category page.
Category page,
Okay.
right? That lists products on each of those pages.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is essentially, my recommendation was just throw a canonical tag that represents page 1 on all the subsequent pages, and okay.
So I would not do that.
Okay.
See, the canonical I was talking about there that Marshall was telling me about was that was going to the view all page. The previous and next, that's what's meant for this sort of thing. So like, you're going to have your main pants page that you want to rank for men's pants, and then you've got like, your ampersand page equals 2, ampersand page equals 3. I would just use the basic rel next, rel previous implementation there.
Okay.
But what I would also do, because if you get 10 pages deep,
Google's not going to be getting down to like pages 7, 8, 9. You know, even if you're like a domain authority 80, 90 site, they're still not going to be getting down to there because that's not, you know, they're never going to rank that page for anything. So then you need to think about, all right, your products that are down on pages 8, 9, 10, how do we bring them up in the architecture as well, right? So you've got your, you know, your faceted and filtered navigation on the side. How are you categorizing your pages that way? But as far as the pagination thing is concerned, I would just use the basic rel next, rel previous implementation and not do the canonical. Anyone else? Yes.
So you were talking about screening fraud with the word count. To my knowledge, screening fraud does not give you word count, it's page size.
Page size,
So
yeah.
you just kind of swapping terminology there?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
do you have a special feature?
Well, no. So what I did was I went and I crawled all my competitors and I saw that this is something that was very well correlated. I saw that we were way low on it. And I basically just went through and spot checked it, right? I threw them all in the URL opener, opened them all up, and kind of paged through to see what was going on there. And noticed in that case that it was the text that my client was lacking on. I mean, they had plenty of code on their pages, probably too much. It was kind of bloated and slow loading, which we're fixing. But I went through and saw that these guys, that their competitors had a lot of written text content, very rich descriptions, that sort of thing on there. And so that's why I made the text recommendation off of that. Yeah.
Speaking of page load,
Yeah.
Google's put a lot of emphasis on page speed the last 18 months. So
Yeah.
what do you think of page speed?
I love fast pages. I hate slow loading pages. Actually, so it's kind of a flippant element, right? Even though we're a search company, we have to release this free product. It's going to be so cool, or it could be so cool. We saw the potential in it. But you wouldn't let them release it until they got the load time and the speed down to a certain point. So they have something within Google that if you're working on a project and it's not going fast enough, you're not allowed to add any more features until you make the product load to a point where it's acceptable to them. And we're talking like getting it down to like half a second, lowering it by half a second or a quarter of a second or something that like to us seems minuscule, but it's so important when you get to a certain scale. So it actually makes a lot of sense to me. I actually just read that chapter yesterday, 2 days ago. It actually makes a lot of sense to me that Google is prioritizing pages that load faster because it provides a better user experience. Obviously, it's just one part of all the different ranking factors that we have. They say 200 plus. They've been saying that for 5 years. So it's just one ranking factor, but it is one that I do think has become bigger in the past couple of years.
John, the page speed is controlled a lot by the bulk of the code and the content, the size of the images, and all of that. I mean, if you had a lot of IT dollars, could you just is the speed of the server part of that as well? I mean, could you take big fat bulky pages and make them faster with hardware?
With hardware, I mean, you can make it fast, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be like the actual code on your pages. Like that client that I showed you that had 10,000 frequency redirects on 250 pages, they had like all of their JavaScript was like they had the same JavaScript on each page. So it was huge, and basically I got them to take all that JavaScript and put it into one file, and then link to it just from a single line on their in their head section of their site, and their page speed sped up and their rankings went up. So it is actually going to take like some development work to if you have that kind of
So
thing.
it's optimizing.
Yeah, well, there's so many other things you can do as well. Like you can use a CDN like Akamai. Akamai is the most prevalent one. There's some others out there as well. You can use a CDN, so a content distribution network that basically they have spaces, they have places all over the world. So they'll actually store your data. For Canada, they'll store it in a Canadian data center, or for the East Coast US, they'll store it in the East Coast US, so it can deliver content that much faster. This is why Google has all their data, has data centers all over the world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there are some like my hotels client for the last 3 years they've been on 3 different Akamai stacks. So basically, it goes through like 3 different ones, and they're actually this weekend they're consolidating down into just one. Their pages have been taking like 20 seconds to load. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with their rankings just from that. I mean, they have a lot of other things going on that's going to make the data muddy, but Yes.
On the time you hear about individual assets that take a time to load, and then just the number of different requests that need to be made on a page. How do you get to that level of scrutiny often? What's your advice for clients in terms of minimizing the total number of calls to the server versus distributing out those calls against those names?
It's a great question. I mean, it depends. It all depends on the client. It all depends on what those calls are that are being made, right? Like if it's JavaScript and it's making 60 JavaScript calls per page, obviously that's something you need to get down. You need to get down to one. But so the way I like to tackle it is I like to go that what are those quick wins that we can get onto the site and then go to the next level. And it obviously gets harder as you're talking about like database calls and that sort of thing. Because that takes a lot more. And then we're not just talking about SEO at that point, right? We're talking about UX and all sorts of things there that are going to take a lot more buy-in in order to get done. So from just an SEO perspective, to get the buy-in, to get those bigger changes, I do the HTML calls and CSS calls, or the JavaScript calls, and CSS calls, and that sort of thing. But it's also interesting, and this is something that I just learned last week, so this is kind of hot off the presses. So for a long time, Google couldn't access JavaScript, right? JavaScript, Ajax, they're having a lot of trouble with this. But then, of course, Facebook comes out with their commenting, and that's great content. People wanted that content to be done. And so one trick that people have done is to load the page and then load the JavaScript. So basically, like fully load the page, stop, and then load the JavaScript and load the Ajax. I actually learned last week that if you don't load the JavaScript that has the content that you want to be loaded in that initial page load, Google will not crawl that JavaScript. So you can't load your page and then stops, because that's what the search crawler sees, is that initial page load. If you then have the JavaScript execute after that, Google is not going to see that content that's being loaded by JavaScript or Ajax. So just a little JavaScript and page load speed pro tip for you. And you kind of have to figure out what are the trade-offs there. Page load speed versus having more content on your site, on your page. Is it going to make a richer page? Is it going to make that big of a difference? But just something to keep in mind.
Follow-up question.
Another question.
Yeah. So a lot of it sounds like the need for technical SEO is skyrocketing with the larger your site is. Seeing that it is site, 20 pages to 500 pages, somewhere in there.
Yep.
What are the most common technical issues that you see there that the common SEO might overlook?
The biggest things that I see are, pagination is a big one. You just have if you have a blog, that's one of the biggest ones I see on blogs are tag pages, especially WordPress sites. People go put 15, 20 tags, and every one you have all these pages that they're all the same. You're just wasting insane amounts of crawl budget on there. Biggest ones that I see on small business sites is, so I have this there's this it's like a trucker insurance website, a guy that I worked with just doing some freelance work, that he actually, so this is one of the issues I'm seeing with small businesses is that 4 or 5 years ago you could have pages turning every single permutation of every single term, right? So I saw an example recently of a guy that works with recruiters. So you'd have Chicago business recruiters, Chicago recruiters business, that sort of thing, which is just complete panda fodder there. And then linking to all of them from the homepage. So that's just his rankings have just been dropping, for the past year, because he just has just instead of having one page that he makes really good that can then rank for all these different terms, he has 6 pages that trying to target these different permutations of. So that's something that I've seen with a lot of small businesses recently, actually. So yeah, at that point, it's too many pages. He had 150 pages, and honestly, he could have had 30. Yeah.
I have a backlink question for you. So we were doing a backlink analysis just to see if we had any negative kind of links coming in that we needed to be careful for. And what we found was that we had a lot of banks linking to our website, which is good.
Okay.
But they were all linking to a very similar page. They were sort of an interstitial page that sits on our site that says, you are coming from this bank to our site. If you want to go back to the bank, click on this link, go back here. Otherwise, continue, right?
Yeah.
So all this equity is getting past this interstitial page, which is doing nothing to the
Right.
site.
Yeah.
And it looks like it was built in the 1990s. You know, and I think if we were to remove those interstitial pages, the banks would probably, if we were to redirect them, the banks would probably kill their links and say, you know, you've got to have that verbiage. It's a legal thing, whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the thoughts I had, and it's another canonical question, but there were 200 of those links coming from pretty decent banks.
Yeah.
So if we were to take those 100 pages, which essentially all look exactly the same,
Right.
except it's got a different bank name, which is a potential panda chew because there's no difference in content.
Yeah.
If we put a canonical tag on those pages that pointed to the page that all of them were pointing to essentially at the end of the interstitial,
Yeah.
would Google see that as gaming a canonical tag to consolidate equity?
I think so. I mean, actually, at that point, I would expect them to ignore the canonical tag.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think because there's probably enough unique content on there that they can tell that there's a difference. Like they can tell it's not the same page.
It's just a different. The bank name is what's different.
Yeah, the bank name is what's different. Yeah.
Oh, hold on.
I'm putting this down. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, when it comes to like regulations and that sort of thing, man, that's a tough one. So we had a client, one of my coworkers worked on in the New York office that they is actually in the banking space that they had profile pages built out for all of these banks, and they were just they were getting hit by panda left, right, and center because they didn't have enough unique content on their pages. So I would actually think how can you build out the content on those individual bank pages to make them useful so that they can possibly rank for terms that you rank for.
Yeah, they're just valueless pages. Like there's no content, and it's only you're leaving X, Y, and Z bank,
Right.
connecting to this one. If you don't want to go to this, click back. So it's really just a legitimate interstitial, like no value except to leave out. So I was just having a difficult time figuring, do we just? I don't want to squander all that equity from the banks, but at the same time, I don't want to look like it's gaming the algorithm by.
I honestly don't know on that one. I really don't. Yeah. I mean, if you can show me later, I'd love to take a look at it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, without looking at it, I don't know.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any questions? Yeah, go back.
So I'm assuming one of your issues is, or one of my issues is correlation versus causation. When you're doing a lot of work trying to get somebody fixed and moved, how do you figure out what's causing good or bad?
Like when you're just starting off, or when you're implementing changes?
If you're making big moves, how do you know which moves are helping and which moves aren't?
Yeah. So this is exactly why I like to pitch tests. This is why I like to test something and then move on from there. So you measure it and then you can pick it out. So I don't like to roll out a ton of changes at one time because then that makes it impossible to separate it out. So this is why I'll put together a strategy of, all right, we're going to do this change this week, and then 3 weeks later we're going to do this, and 2 weeks after we're going to report on it. So that then we can measure it out.
Is Google fast enough in giving you results that are meaningful that you're not spacing stuff up by 6, 8, 10 weeks?
I mean, it all depends on the site.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you can get good enough of an idea, in a couple of weeks. If you need to, pull it out like 6 weeks to make the changes. Or I mean, if you have big enough of a site, you can have tests running on like different types of pages at different times, right? You can test internal links on this section. You can test content on this section. Obviously, they're not, they might not necessarily be like apples to apples. Like, this section might be stronger than this section, but you can still get a good idea about what's going to make it. I hate lumping in changes together. I have a client that's about to roll out a ton of changes together, and it's just going to be a total nightmare because you're not able to attribute anything. Like it's really, really hard to attribute anything.
Just up and to the right. That's all you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Just show up and to the right.
Exactly. But I mean, that's what execs are going to care about. But like, getting buy-in from development, like they want to see, they want to see a return as well. They want to know that these hours that they put into this change actually made a difference and actually made the company money. So, yeah, I mean, yes, at the end of the day, revenue is what matters, but like, you know, the people doing the work matter as well. So, yeah, it is hard when you roll out a ton of changes to build those case studies. So yeah, that correlation causation thing is interesting. Yes.
What do you think quality content looks like to a search engine?
What does quality content look like to a search engine?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Quality content to a search engine. So, I do think that the search engines can see the different kinds of content that you have on a page, right? They know they can differentiate between text content, video content, images, that sort of thing. So I think that's part of it. So different types of content is something that can be a quality indicator. I also think for certain verticals, social activity can be an indicator to them as well. And they can actually tell when you're gaining social activity. Also, there's a great post that Dwayne Forrester wrote on like the Buyin webmaster blog a while ago that he actually visualized out like this is content, this is viral content that was gained. It's like huge blotches of like 6 or 7 different blotches of people sharing it, and this is another piece of viral content that is just like a big interconnected web. So you can actually see what's going on there. So depending on like the kind of the vertical that it's in, that sort of thing, the social activity can be another indicator like that. Hey, this content is actually like people are actually enjoying this content. It's useful to them. Maybe we should rank it better. Yeah, I mean that's a huge question.
It's a totally unfair question.
Yeah, totally unfair. Yeah.
But it's an important one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean obviously Google knows like they can know what level of what reading level the content is at. I mean you can even drill down to that in the search results. Over like grade 8 or over whatever. So and that's obviously going to depend on vertical as well, right? It's a kid's website and it's like grade 12 plus. Like that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it gets kind of dicey. I do think it's vertical specific, but I'll definitely stick with I would definitely go with the content types, social activity as being the big ones.
Even though Pinterest has a lot of following, do you think they look at sites like that in terms of gauging velocity of whatever is trendy? They take that into account.
Or even just
Probably do.
sites like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Pinterest, Tumblr, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, even though they're no follow, Google knows about them. There's the age-old debate, like, do no follow links pass any equity? Yes and no. I mean, it could probably be an indicator that this sort of thing is popular. But they know if it's coming from Pinterest and it's a product page on Pinterest, or if it's like a spam comment on a blog. So like spam comment on a blog isn't going to pass anything, but like from Pinterest it might. If there's a ton of them, that probably is an indicator. But once again, they can tell if it's being manipulated or not. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes.
How do you see Google Plus playing into SEO as far as signals coming out?
That's a good one.
What's Google Plus?
I knew someone was going to say that. I actually love Google Plus. I think it's great. So I think in the future, so right now I think Google Plus is worth investing in for SEO reasons. From getting new content crawl sort of perspective, you submit it to them with some tests done. You put a link to a new page or whatever, new content on Google Plus, and it gets indexed in like under an hour or something like that. I don't remember what exactly it was. But I think that Google Plus is actually going to play in very heavily in the future. I mean, Google has actually come out and said that they want to centralize everything. They want to know everything about you, about the searches. They want to centralize everything, for their different searchers under one roof, as it were. So I think it's actually going to come in heavily. Obviously, it ranks very well because it's on Google's domain. So the content will rank very well. I think it's actually going to make as much as I like Google Plus, I think it's going to make our jobs more difficult as SEOs as well, because it's going to personalize everything a lot more, right? We still, for some reason, a lot of us have this notion, especially when it comes to thinking about rankings, you still have this notion of universal rankings, right? Universal search. That doesn't really exist anymore, right? Because of, they use your search history, they use, if you're logged into Google, they use your, stuff you +1. They use your location. They use so much. Plus the admin not provided, right? The more people are on Google Plus, the more people are logged into Google, because it's serving them better content, the less data we're going to get. Which, from an SEO perspective, is troublesome, right? We're getting less data. Yeah, there's certain things that you can do to figure out, like, what keywords might be driving traffic, ratings, and take potential traffic, and, kind of model it out, but it's still not perfect. So I think it's actually going to make our lives more difficult. But I don't know. Sometimes I struggle to see why that's a bad thing, because it's actually going to force us to do better marketing overall, right? And like SEO is not going to be as much in a silo. It's going to be more of a part of online marketing, where it's working with social, it's working with cadence, it's working with content, it's working with retargeting and all these different things.
What happened for John Doherty?